The Excel renderer supports many of the interactive features of reports, taking advantage of similar features that are built into Excel. The worksheet will contain a range of cells for report items like data regions, subreports, rectangles, and the report body, but will include single cells for each text box and graphic element. This requires that the renderer merge some cells in order to preserve the overall structure and layout of the report, which, in reports that go beyond a simple row and column layout, may require careful report design to make the report usable in Excel, if that's a requirement for users. Now, one warning: the Excel worksheet will include only images for most graphic elements, things like charts, indicators, sparklines, and maps, with no access to the underlying data that went into the creation of the graphic element in the source report. So even though the graphic element in the report may be dynamic based on the data, it's going to be a static image within Excel. So if you change the data within Excel, the image is not going to get updated. So what you'd have to do in that case is just create a replacement pie chart, for example, with an Excel pie chart. At least it's something that you can work around. The Excel renderer attempts to preserve the appearance and structure of the report as much as it can, but you're likely to find some things missing. For example, the background images for report items will be lost in the Excel worksheet, but a background image in the report body will become the worksheet background image. So that's the difference between individual report items and the background of the report itself. Now, the Excel renderer is a soft page break renderer by default, but it will respect any explicit page breaks that you include in the report. The result is that if a report contains only soft page breaks, the entire report is going to render into a single worksheet. But if you add explicit page breaks within the report, that'll cause the report to split into multiple worksheets at the breaks that you specify. One worksheet per explicit page. You can define unique page names in a report with explicit page breaks, and those names will become the worksheet names. And if you configure an initial page name, but not names for subsequent page breaks, the subsequent worksheets will have the initial name and a unique number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. Finally, if you haven't used page names in the report, the worksheet will take on the name of the report itself. Now, one interesting thing that happens is that report page headers will render in the top cells of each worksheet, so it's part of the worksheet itself. But page footer items go into the worksheet footer section. So it doesn't create a header section for you, but it does create a footer section for you. The footer will include only text boxes, and text longer than 256 characters will be truncated. Yet another example where if your users are going to be exporting a particular report frequently to Excel, you can help them by designing the report, for example, to not exceed that 256 character limits in text boxes. Another item is that if the report includes a document map, that will become the first worksheet in the workbook, and hyperlinks and actions will be preserved. I just love that. So Microsoft really spent a lot of time trying to implement interactive features in the export format when it was possible and when it made sense. Now, interactive sorting isn't supported in the worksheet, but users can take advantage of the built-in sorting capabilities of Excel. At least those are better than the capabilities of Word. Any expressions in the report will appear as constant values, including the results of conditional formatting expressions. The formatting will appear correctly in Excel, but it's no longer based on the data. So you change the data, the formatting is no longer going to change with that data. One nice thing is that unlike reports exported to Word, you don't have to first expand hidden sections of the report. Instead, Excel will use its Outlines feature to let the user expand or collapse and unhide or hide parts of the report. I'm going to take a look at a few different reports to talk about some of the different features of the Excel rendering format. First one I want to look at is drill down. Okay, so there's the initial view of the report. We can at least see some company counts and so forth, but it's initially displayed in its collapsed state. So I'll go ahead and export this to Excel. Select the Export button and Excel. And I'll just go ahead and directly open it. Might be a little bit illusory. It actually is saving it as a file on the local machine, but you also have the option of directly saving it without opening it, or saving it as a different file name, different location, and so forth. And even though I'm running everything on my local machine, Excel very helpfully gives me this protected view warning. Be careful. It just sees that I downloaded this file through Internet Explorer or through any browser, and so it pops up this warning. So that's great, but I can enable editing in order to get access to all of the features of the report from within Excel. All right, so there's a few things to notice about this report. So the first thing is that the source report, the drill downs report, doesn't use page names. So the worksheet is named drill down, same as the report itself. And then, second thing is that the worksheet includes an Excel outline pane over here. So you can use the plus and later the minus buttons for an expanded section in order to drill down into the different features. So the first big difference is this right here. Unlike the Word export format, Excel preserves all of the data of the report, even if it wasn't visible in the report when I chose to export it. It's a big difference between Word and Excel. Word loses that information. All it presents you is what was visible when you exported the report. Okay, so I can expand and collapse. I can select different rows and so forth. I can use these buttons up here to expand or collapse to a particular level. Here to level 3. If I only want level 2, I can go there. To level 1, it goes back up to the source document. And if I want to expand the whole thing all at once, I can use 4, and I can scroll down through this entire document. My mouse wheel doesn't want to go all the way to the top, so I'll use the scroll bar. The expanded and collapsed state of the worksheet will correspond to the state of the report when you export it to Excel. So it is related a little bit to the state of the report. So if I had expanded the United Kingdom, England, and any city sections of the report, then those would also be initially expanded in the Excel sheet. So let me close this version of the report. Let's not save that. And now I'm going to drill down here into the United Kingdom. And expand there. I'll expand a little bit of Canada. Go down into British Columbia and Richmond. Okay, so I've expanded a few sections here. Now I'll go ahead and export the report again to Excel. I'll go ahead and directly open it. And so you can see that the initial state of the worksheet reflects the state of the report when I created the export format. So it is linked, but at least the Excel spreadsheet has all of the data available. All right, another difference. I'm going to come over here to SQL Server Data Tools. And here's that report definition within Data Tools where I originally created it. If I look at this cell right here, right-click on it, and select Expression to open up the Expression dialog box, you can see that that company field, that company count field there, this is at the country region level. So for that cell, it has an expression of all of the companies, a count of them, within that category. So in this case, for this particular cell, it's the count of all of the companies within that country. And then I have corresponding values here, all of the number of companies within the state or province, and then within the city. So that's how that report is defined. All right, so let me close that, go back over here to Excel, and here's the corresponding column there. So that was that first expression that I showed you. Notice, though, that this is a static value, 107. So the expression did not carry forward. It's no longer dynamic. So if I were to delete any of the rows of data here, these numbers are not going to be updated. They're not dynamic. I'll just go ahead and prove that. Select that right there and select delete. And notice that these numbers didn't change at all. It's still 107. So my initial reaction when I saw that was a little bit disappointment because, gosh, Excel has the capabilities of doing that. But what really the problem is that I'm sure there's a lot of expressions that I can define within a report that don't have direct analogs within Excel. And so that probably would complicate the Excel renderer beyond the capability of Microsoft to have it do its job well. So disappointing, but it kind of makes sense to me. All right, another thing to notice here is that a number of cells are merged in the worksheet. Okay, so for example, we have these different companies here and so forth. So I want to select British Columbia. Notice that all of those cells are merged together. So that's a single cell. Similarly, that is a single cell there. So the renderer has done some intelligent merging of cells. And the nice thing about this is that it makes the worksheet more Excel-like. Because if these were still individual cells, that would be just kind of weird, and it'd be difficult to implement the outlining correctly. Okay, that's enough of the drill down report. Let's come back over here to Report Manager. And now I want to take a look at this reseller cumulative sales report. Again, it has parameters and this document map. All right, so I'm viewing it here in Report Manager. I'm going to export it to Excel. And open it up directly once again. All right, so what's interesting here is that I now have two worksheets within the single workbook. And the first worksheet has the document map, and it's named appropriately. And of course, within the worksheet, I can change that to whatever name I want. So I can use the document map, drill down into different parts of the document, and go directly to, in this case, the companies within Germany in Europe. So I'll click there, and it takes me over to the worksheet, goes down almost 1,000 rows to that value-added reseller. So that's how the document map works within Excel. Really is pretty slick as a way to navigate large reports. And in the worksheet, if the user doesn't want that, they can just go ahead and delete the document map, and it doesn't need to clutter up their worksheet or workbook. All right, let's get rid of that one. Let's look at another report, in this case the category sales by year. So this displays various data visualizations. I'll go ahead and export it to Excel. And there's the report. Notice I don't have any grouping in this report, so there's no outlining feature there. But what's important here is that these individual data visualization elements, the data bars, the spark lines, and the indicators, are static images. So if I right-click on any of these, you'll notice that I get the pop-up list that Excel displays for pictures. So I can modify the pictures. I can format the picture. I can change its size. I can add a hyperlink and so forth. I can even include a different picture. If I wanted to include a picture of one of my dogs here, I could do that. Now the important thing here is that these are static images. So if I take a relatively small sales amount here, so the maximum we have is, it looks like 25 million. I'm going to go ahead and change this number to something pretty large, 250 million, and hit enter. Keep an eye on these images, hit enter. Notice that the images didn't change. They're static. They're no longer linked to the state of the data. That element of interactivity was lost in the export to Excel. Back in the report itself, if I refresh the report, if the data has changed, and 2006 actually had $250 million in sales, then those images would have changed. All right, close this. And I want to look at one more report. Just hit the back button on my mouse. I want to look at one more report to see how the Excel renderers handles report headers and footers by default. So I have this report called Employee List Globals that displays here. And as you can see, I have both a report header and a report footer. So I have some report information down here. All right, I'll export this to Excel. And here you can see, first of all, that the header, the contents of the header, is in the first row of the spreadsheet. It didn't create a worksheet header for it. It just put it within the body of the spreadsheet itself. So I can scroll down here, a lot of data, go further and further and further, and continue on down. And we can, in fact, go all the way to the bottom of the report. I'll hit Control down arrow. And there's still no report footer data. It's not visible within the body of the report. So the easiest way to see that it's in fact there is to go to File, Print, and the Preview section here. And you can see, it's kind of fuzzy, but you can see that the report footer is in fact there. If I move from page to page, the data appears within the report. Okay? So the footer is in fact there, because it's implemented as an Excel footer. So if I go over here into Insert, not all of the ribbon is visible here because I'm using a relatively low resolution, but I can expand the text section here, and there's the header and footer, and there you can see the definition of that footer there. There's nothing in the header, but I can now use the features of Excel to, frankly, better format that footer. It just didn't translate well. And that's part of what I did within the report definition. Didn't lay it out well. It works for the report itself, but doesn't work for Excel all that much. But what I can do is click on the custom footer button here, and then I can move this stuff around and do whatever makes sense. I'd probably move the actual information over to the left section or put it in the middle or whatever makes sense for the footer data. But in that case, I'm essentially adapting what came from the report to something that is more native or works better from within Excel.